All right, welcome everyone to the Fantasy 15. We're your source for fantasy football. We got a great show for you today. This is our kickoff show, and make sure that you follow us and subscribe and like. We are on X, YouTube, and after this, it will be uploaded onto Spotify. And then, of course, all season long, we'll be sending you different TikToks for your different tips for tricks, for trades, and anything to help you with your draft or during the season. So make sure that you follow us at all of our different social media, and we'll be providing you weekly fantasy football throughout the season. So make sure you tune in for us. Now, our goal for Fantasy 15 is to make sure that we give you the quick, dirty. That way you can set your picks in case that you forgot. You can watch our stream, and we're going to give you our top 15 all in 15 minutes to make sure that you're successful to make your fantasy football playoffs come week 15. We got a great host or guest host for you today with Jason Harmon. He'll be featured in our overtime segment. Can't wait to ask him some different questions about the Minnesota Vikings that he covers, his new podcast that he's featured on, and we just have an awesome show for you today. But with no further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right in to the Fantasy 15 and our top 15 charts at each position. All right. Got a great one for you with our quarterback charts for this season. These are our season overall charts, and all of our top 15 are 0.5 PPR. Now, highlighted by our number one quarterback projected, Lamar Jackson. What else can you say? They've definitely beefed up on the wide receiver spectrum. I definitely anticipate Isaiah Likely to have a better season than he did last year. He started out hot and then kind of trailed off. Him and Mark Andrews are going to be an incredible duo for Lamar Jackson all season. I expect him to be great. We know Josh Allen's going to be great. Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow. Those top four locks for your fantasy football. Try to get one of those quarterbacks if you can in your draft. Also followed in there is Dak Prescott. That might surprise you at number 7. But it doesn't surprise me. Anyone that follows fantasy football, when he's healthy, he's a top quarterback in the league in fantasy football. Kyler Murray having a better chemistry with Marvin Harrison Jr., I think is really going to be something to watch. Marvin Harrison Jr. had a rookie season last year where he started slow, came on a little bit more towards the end, and I expect him coming in bigger this season, faster, and better chemistry with Kyler Murray. Justin Herbert. So the thing that we want to cover with him is he's got his old wide receiver back with Keenan Allen, and Ladd McConkey is going to be better than he was last year in his rookie season. So look for him to have a dynamic season, especially when he's got Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton in the backfield. Now, with your top 15, Drake May, he is in there. He had a rookie season. He came on towards the end. He's going to be a runner and a passer this season, especially with this new number one wide receiver, Stephon Diggs. So look for him to have a big season, not only in the pass game, but also with his legs. And that's where he can be dynamic, is with his legs. And when you're in fantasy football, taking a look at who isn't on this list that maybe got snubbed that could be a sleeper, Justin Fields. Justin Fields with the New York Jets is going to be a quarterback that we need to watch all season long. Because again, when he gets going with his legs, and if he can stay healthy all season, he is going to be a force in fantasy football and could be one that you can get later in your drafts. Moving on to our top 15 running back chart, man, Bijan Robinson had a great season last year, but again, can Bijan Robinson have a better season with a little bit more stability at the quarterback position? So he absolutely is the leader in the clubhouse, but Saquon Barkley had an amazing season last year, and I just don't know, putting that many carries on your body as he's starting to get up there in age, can Saquon do it again? That's going to be the question. Jamar Gibbs at 3. Dynamic 1-2 punch that Detroit has between Gibbs and Montgomery. Now, is Montgomery going to snipe some touchdowns from them when they get towards the goal line? Absolutely. But Gibbs, make no doubt, especially in the receiving game is going to get you points to help you in your league. It could be the revitalization of Christian McCaffrey. You either win or you lose your league when you draft Christian McCaffrey. If he can stay healthy, he can be the factor to win your league. Now, you do see that I have Taylor with the Colts a little bit higher, and I think that's because of quarterback situation. I think they're going to have to run the ball a little bit more. And again, uh, Taylor is one of the best running backs in the league. I think he's going to have a really good season. They're going to have to lean on the run a little bit more. You do see rookie Ashton Genty with the Las Vegas Raiders ranked a little bit lower for me, and that only has to do because of the situation with the run game last year. Just because Genty comes in there doesn't mean that the blocking situation for the Raiders has gotten any better. You got to look at Brown with Cincinnati. Brown was an unbelievable three-down running back. What I mean by that is he's there for the passing game and the run game. Look for him to be a high-point scorer if he stays healthy all season long. Chuba Hubbard. I really think Chuba Hubbard, and I'll talk about this later, Chuba Hubbard is somebody that you need to have on your draft board. If you can get him, Chuba Hubbard is going to get a lot of carries. He doesn't have a lot of competition for that and just signed a new deal. Chuba Hubbard is going to have a great fantasy football season. Walker and Charbonnet in Seattle. I don't like to switch off between the two. Make sure you have Charbonnet if you have Walker. He had injury troubles last year. Charbonnet is a good running back that could take over that situation going forward if you're in a dynasty league. Our top 15 wide receiver chart, none other than Jamar Chase. Now, as a Viking fan myself, this chart does not reflect my feelings on skill at the wide receiver position. So if you're asking Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson what camp I'm in, man, Jamar had one great year last year winning that triple crown, but where has he been the last 4 years compared to Justin Jefferson? That's all I'll say on that. Followed by CeeDee Lamb at number 2, Puka Nacua. Man, Puka's going to get a lion's share of the carries, even though you have Devontae Adams there. But don't count Puka Nacua. He is that security blanket for Matt Stafford once, hopefully, he's back healthy. Justin Jefferson, I still think he's going to be towards the top. He's still going to be a top target. But with the chemistry I've seen in training camp and really just everything with Jordan Addison combined with J.J. McCarthy, there's something working there to where he likes targeting Jordan Addison a lot. That could take away a little bit from Justin Jefferson again. Back that he's got a rookie quarterback is why he's at number 4. Malik Neighbors could be a bounce back season. Had a little bit of injury trouble. He started out really hot. Was getting the lion's share of the carries. Came back, still had a great year. Now, he had David Jones for part of the season, and just the quarterback situation in New York was a disaster last year. I expect them, even with Russell Wilson, if he plays the entire season, to be a little bit more stable at that position. Nico Collins at 10 is another one I'll highlight. He had injury troubles last year. Again, this year, if he stays healthy, sure. I just don't know how much we can trust him. Jackson Smith and Jigba with Seattle. He's the number 1 this year. We'll see if he can handle those duties. And again, DK Metcalf paired up with Aaron Rodgers. He's the number 1 there. He had a few mouths to feed when he was in Seattle last year. This year, he gets the lion's share of all the targets. Our top 15 tight end chart, Brock Bowers with the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, he's got a better quarterback this year in Geno Smith, and he was great last year. So I expect him to be even better this year, having a great season. And absolutely, Brock Bowers, he's your number 1. But on his heels is Trey McBride. You can't ignore the amount of targets that Trey McBride gets with the Cardinals. Yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get some of those targets, but man, Kyler Murray really relied on Trey McBride. George Kittle is getting a little bit older up there, but he's still one of those top 3 tight ends. He's going to get a lot of carries, especially with the wide receiver situation and getting rid of the wide receiver, Deebo Samuel, not there as well. that's going to factor into where Churchill can be targeted a little bit more. TJ Hawkinson, I think, again, I have him higher than most, but TJ is another target that JJ McCarthy in Minnesota likes to tight end. TJ Hawkinson is going to get a lot of targets. I really think you need to look for Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft, again, he got to start last year because of an injury in Green Bay. He should get to start the entire year and should be a target, especially with the wide receiver situation. They don't know who a number one is. Is it Tucker Kraft in Green Bay? Tucker Kraft's going to have a good year in my opinion. Absolutely. Now, Mark Andrews is a little bit lower, and I have him a lot lower than a lot of people do. But again, I think that has to do with the situation with Lamar likes to run. Yes, he likes Mark Andrews, but Isaiah likely has emerged. You also have Derrick Henry. Rashad Bateman's back there. He's going to get some different targets as well. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Baltimore. I don't think Mark Andrews is going to get as many as he did. And is it the year that Pitts finally shows? Kyle Pitts finally shows the talent and the skill that everybody thought he had. He was supposed to be a top 5 tight end talent and just hasn't shown it. I have him higher on my list, but again, he's got to show it. Moving on to our top 15 kicker chart, Jake Bates. Jake Bates had a great year last year with Detroit. They have a high-powered offense. He's going to get a lot of opportunities, whether that be field goals or extra points. Jake Bates is going to be in the top 10 for any kicker this league this year. So any league that you're in, make sure that you try to get Jake Bates if you can later in your draft, followed by the other high-powered offenses this year that are going to get a lot of opportunities. Again, you may be thinking, well, why is Dallas if they're running? A healthy Dak Prescott is still going to be throwing the ball a lot, and they're still going to be in position to where there's a lot of field goal opportunities where they may not be able to convert. Moving on to our top 15 defensive chart, it's the Minnesota Vikings. Who you got? Yes, maybe a little bit of a homer pick, but if you've been following them at all in training camp, they've been wreaking havoc in training camp against beefed up, which should be a top 5, at least top 10 offensive line with the Minnesota Vikings. And this defensive line is it's hard to even improve your game at times if you're J.J. McCarthy and the rest of the quarterbacks in Minnesota, because that defense is just so good. Jonathan Bernard, Dan Ginkle, Dallas Turner. Oh, by the way, you added Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen to Harrison Phillips. Man, Ivan Pace, that front 7 is just an absolute beast. Look out for them. Steelers are going to be great again this year. They've made some additions in the offseason. The Broncos are going to be there. Texans. I think the Lions step up. Defense was a concern last year, but didn't have to keep healthy. They've made some additions in the offseason. The Lions are going to be high on this defense. We did get a preview at the Patriots when they were in Minnesota. I think the Patriots, once they get Christian Gonzalez back at corner healthy, they will be a force to be reckoned with as well. Other teams, the Bears, made a lot of investments on both sides of the ball in the trenches. That includes the defense. I think the Bears had a really good defensive year last year. And with the offense hopefully getting a little bit better, the Bears are also going to have a better defense, be put in better situations, and maybe not on the field as much. I got the Bears at number 12. Those are the defenses that I think are going to make a very big impact this year. But again, you may say it's a homer pick, but absolutely, the Minnesota Vikings are my number 1 with the bullet. If you have any comments on any of these charts while we're live and hosting, go ahead and throw a comment on X, Facebook, YouTube, and we'll go ahead and we'll get to your comments and we'll answer your questions on any of these charts. If you have any start questions, please send them my way. Sleepers of the year that I have this season. I mentioned Chuba Hubbard because Chuba Hubbard, man, he got the lion's share last year, and he earned that contract. Now, I say sleepers because a lot of people have an average draft position for Chuba Hubbard closer to like the 18 mark. And I really think Chuba Hubbard has the potential to be a top 10 running back. So put Chuba Hubbard on your watch list, in your queue. You need to get Chuba Hubbard if possible this year. Travion Henderson. Ramondre Stevenson has been not as healthy, and when he was in Minnesota, he was on the bike working out. He may be back for week 1, but again, who ends up being the number 1? Travion Henderson, right? Look out for Travion, possibly take that number 1 job yet middle and late this year. Calvin Ridley, Cam Ward, he's been having a pretty decent training camp and preseason, and there's been talk that Calvin Ridley has looked great in the chemistry between the two. I expect him to really just show out this year as that number 1 there if he stays healthy, which he has had issues in the past. A boot cut for Tampa Bay. You have an aging Mike, Mike Evans, and then you had issues with Chris Godwin with health last year too. So they're both kind of aging as well. So Ibuka has really shown out in the preseason and in training camp. He could possibly lead this team in targets and catches this year in Tampa Bay. Jaden Higgins, again, he may start the season as a number 2 wide receiver there in Houston with C.J. Stroud, and then also Nico Collins. He could be a sleeper to watch to where he may take over that job as the number 2 Z receiver. And then in conjunction with his situation in Cleveland, if he gets a starting job, he could take the lead there. That's all the time we have. That's our 15 minutes of the Fantasy 15. And now we're going to move into overtime with our guest that we have coming, which is Jason Harmon. And I want to welcome him as well to the stage. Jason, how are you doing today?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Doing great. So again, this is overtime with our special guest, Jason Harmon. Jason is from the Before I Die pod on Score North, and he's also the Sleeper NFL Vikings content curator. You may have seen a lot of his videos if you follow him on X or search for anything on X having to do with the Minnesota Vikings, because he's there all training camp and through the preseason, uploading different videos, getting content that other individuals just absolutely die for, because he's there getting the in-depth questions, all the in-depth analysis, and also he's hearing all the rumors and putting it out there first and foremost. So, Jason, tell us a little bit about your new pod, Before I Die, on Score North.
Yeah, so this is the weekly Purple Daily episode that's a little more of a fan perspective than maybe what Phil and Judd and Dex bring on their daily shows. But this is the 2025 cast. It's myself, Jesse Pierce, Leighton Glodick. We have only done one episode to this point. Next week, our second episode will actually be live at the Score North booth. I said stage. It's more of a house, weirdly enough. I haven't been to the state fair, so the buildings throw me off. But I saw pictures. I think we're on the porch of a building. But we will be there live next Tuesday, 2 to 3 Central, recording our second episode. So no pressure for the first day at the state fair. Can't overeat, because I would just fall asleep in the middle of the podcast. So,
as someone that knows something about kickoff shows and your first episode and maybe some nerves, I can definitely relate. And you did a fantastic job. I listened to the first episode of Before I Die. I think you guys done a wonderful job, and I think that is definitely going to be something that I'm going to keep an eye on and keep listening and watching for your next and following episodes as well. So
I appreciate that.
Congrats.
Yeah, it'll. I think next week will be interesting. If you're going to be at the state fair next Tuesday, I know a lot of people have like jobs, things like that. But if for some reason you take the day off and are like, hey, I want to go to the state fair on a less busy day, come through. The normal Purple Daily Cast will be recording, I believe, for 2 hours before us, and then we'll be on 2 to 3. But it's going to be in the middle of roster cuts, so it should be an interesting live show if you're going to be around.
Now, I know Layden told you this too, but I think on the pod you guys talked about this a little bit, but you said you might eat all that fried food that they're going to have at the Minnesota State Fair before you do the pod. Is that a mistake, Jason?
It's probably a mistake, but we have a 3-month-old daughter who will be coming with us because she's easy to get around. It doesn't really require too much other than the ability to sleep anywhere and just being fed. My 2-year-old son who I love dearly, is in that chaos toddler phase. So
Sure.
he will not be coming. He'll be at daycare. But in order to get out on time, we have to leave right after we record, just to play it safe, pick him up in time. So I won't have time after to eat any of the good food. And I don't really know if we want to run it back and take him and have to deal with that chaos. So, we probably will go again, but we just want to play it safe. I'll be walking a lot. I'm going to pace myself, water. We're going to split food. We're going to be smart about it. And we'll probably save the Sweet Marthas for on the way out, just because that would be the knockout punch to knock me out pre-pod.
You got to have a
From
pail of
what I've
Sweet
heard,
Martha's cookies, right?
yeah, that's the one thing I've known about for most of my life, even having never been to the state fair.
If you're going to go to the state fair, I think at least three things you got to do is cheese curds for sure, deep fried Oreos, right? And then Sweet Martha's. I mean,
Yeah.
the Minnesota State Fair is known for Sweet Martha's cookies, so absolutely you got to do that.
I know to do mouthtrap. I'm gonna probably not do the deep fried Oreo. I've had those in different places, and they're all pretty similar to me. But I heard Pronto Pups, kind of the infamous Pronto versus corn dog debate,
Sure.
is kind of I have to get my taste test in to be able to make an official decision. So
Never had them, but I will wait for your review on the Before I Die podcast.
yeah, look forward to it. I'll also probably post detailed food reviews for a day on Twitter. So
Awesome. Well, so Jason, you cover the Minnesota Vikings. You're at training camp every day. And what players stood out to you the most while you were covering Minnesota Vikings training camp? What
yeah, well, there's different ways to go with this because some players stood out not for the best reasons. I'm very big on Ty Felton. I think with the ball in his hands, he could be very explosive. I don't think he's quite there yet. We're hearing reports today that the Vikings are seriously looking to acquire a receiver. I was
Mhm.
hoping they would do that after just being at camp, but the Jalen Naylor news kind of is forcing their hand a little bit, along with obviously the Addison suspension. I'll touch on that in a little bit because I have thoughts of where they may go. But I think those are guys who kind of stood out, or well, that's one guy who stood out as far as like, ooh, I see the potential, but he's not quite crisp enough in cutting in and out of routes. His hands need to soften up.
Mhm.
But this is going to sound crazy, but one guy who really stood out is a guy who's been on the practice squad the last 2 years and got a good amount of work in with the first team, which is Thayer Thomas. I'm not going to even sit here and say that I think he makes the 53. I
Sure.
think he has a hell of a lot better chance to do it now than he did pre-camp. But man, that guy is fast, and he is really, really good at just throwing the defender off. And obviously, he's up against a lot of the times second to third string guys, but he's very crisp in his ability, especially on those comebacks and slant routes, just to cut and get to where he needs to go. And he's made some really good catches. I'd also say probably not the most fantasy relevant position, but Oscar Chapman looked really good to me. Him and Ryan Wright were battling it out pretty closely through the majority of camp, and then I think Chapman kind of separated himself pretty significantly in the last week. I can't tell much on returner from purely watching practices. You don't really get to see the return teams in their full glory, but I'd say Miles Price is a guy I didn't think would make the roster, and now they're probably going to have to consider keeping him in at a wide receiver spot in order to return punts or kicks. I don't know how that's going to go. That's going to be very intriguing. But those are a few guys. Tim Jones showed flashes in that last preseason game. He was pretty consistent in camp. I was hoping to see more out of Silas Bolden. I hope he's a guy who makes the practice squad because he's got a lot of
Mhm.
raw potential that could pay off, I think, long term.
Absolutely. I agree with you on Oscar Chapman. If I'm thinking about different players that I consider cuttable, if you will, Ryan Wright is at the top of my list. And the reason for that is he doesn't flip the field. He has had issues with that the last 2 years of pinning teams inside the 20. And Oscar Chapman, he's shown the ability at least to have a little bit better placement of the ball. And with his, banana peel punts that he has, I think it gives returners a little bit uneasiness of even returning that football. We saw a little bit of that in the preseason game. Something that should have been a free catch. They're letting it drop. And again, if we get that Vikings bounce, That's great because at least if they're not returning it, we're not having some kind of freak punt return touchdown that flips a game. But you got to be able to flip the field and help our defense out a little bit. So Ryan Wright is one of them that I definitely feel that way. And I was going to hold this off for a little bit later, but we have some questions to get to. The first one from Fat Killa is, how do you feel about the Vikings wide receiver situation? Do you feel they will bring someone in from the outside? I want Adam Thielen. And now I've heard that from multiple individuals where Adam Thielen has been brought up as a possible target. But again, you got to trade for him. There's a salary that's attached to that. And then do the Carolina Panthers want to get rid of their most veteran pass catcher, and Adam Thielen? What do you think?
Yeah, I talked about this the other day on Before I Die. So if you watch that, these will probably be some similar talking points. I'm for it just because of what I saw in camp. It's very clear if you're looking for a burner, somebody who's gonna stretch the field with Jefferson being bracketed, kind of do what Jordan Addison does.
Yep.
It's not going to be Adam Thielen. The issue I saw come up time in and time out at camp, especially with somebody like Jalen Naylor, Ty Felton, guys like that, is the hands. A lot of dropped catches. Lucky Jackson really stood out the first couple weeks, but his ability to get to where the ball's going was a little inconsistent as far as going up or being able to catch with a defender kind of in his face. I think there's nothing more important to me right now than having somebody with sure hands, and Adam Thielen brings that, and he's worked out with McCarthy through the offseason. This is not going to be some resurgence of 2018, 2019, 2020 Thielen. I think the nostalgia goggles get a little too blurry sometimes. I just think it's somebody who can catch the ball and has familiarity with the offense. To me, as far as what would probably be a reasonable cost benefit analysis as far as what it would take, I would say that. Obviously, you have guys like Scary Terry, who people are throwing around online, which I don't think is realistic, but that would be bonkers. I saw Tyler Fornes mention Chris Olave. I don't see that happening, but those are names that I would be like run through a
Sure.
wall excited about, especially when Addison
Olave,
comes back. That's insane. I don't see that happening. I think if they were interested in somebody like Cooper, they would have signed him already.
Sure.
OBJ, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Carolina would be willing to get rid of Thielen for, I don't want to guess, but I'd say probably a fifth to sixth. They have a lot of young receivers who, ironically, I'm going to talk about in a little bit, who need to get more action, especially with Bryce Young in a big prove it year for him. I think they drafted him 2023. He was the first overall pick. Yeah, I got my calendar correct there. So this is really going into his third year. This is where you expect to make a determination on, is this really the guy? Especially after he got benched last year.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to want to see him with that core that he'd be around for a long time. So I think Carolina has incentive to do it if the price is right.
Sure. Other targets I've heard is Gabe Davis, but which he's talking back to Buffalo again. So he may be going back where it started for him. But somebody that I really like that makes sense is Tyler Boyd. And I say Tyler Boyd because, one, he's not going to cost us anything. Two, he has been a sure-handed pass catcher in the league, especially with the bulk of time that he was in Cincinnati. And at least he's gettable, and we could for sure get him. And he actually fits in with this offense. So that would be something that I think is plus. And you got to look at, not just the names, you got to look at the fit. So Addison plays a Z receiver. Justin Jefferson kind of goes from X to Z to slot. So you got to find somebody that's actually going to be a good fit for what we need. If Naylor is back and he's healthy, he likes playing that Z position and can play the Z. Tyler Boyd would fit in well playing that slot position for where we need him. So that's something to think about. And
yeah,
I
think... I would just add real quick on that. I think what the team is going to need in those first 3 weeks with Addison out, but I'd say really up until the bye after the Europe trip, is going to look different than after. I think I say it time and again what Kevin O'Connell said, teams fail young quarterbacks before the young quarterbacks fail them. They're going to be very precise and intentional with the offense they run with McCarthy. I think it's going to be a lot of, I mean, I saw more screens at training camp, I think, in one day than I saw my entire time watching Kevin O'Connell, I think. But I think, not to say McCarthy can't do it. I have full faith that he's going to be this franchise's quarterback for a long time. I just think they're going to kind of keep him in a rhythm early on and then let him open it up. So I don't think you need somebody who's going to necessarily do the same things that we saw last year. I think this
Sure.
offense is going to look very different than what it did with Darnold and a lot of deep plays, at least to start.
Comments we have out in the audience is Great Viking says Amari Cooper would be nice. And I'm sure, that might be nice. But, again, is it a good fit? Does he still have anything left in the tank? Does he have the desire to still play? So that's one thing that's out there.
Yeah, I think the Pelissero report saying that they're calling teams shopping for a receiver tells
Mhm.
you everything you need to know about their thoughts on the existing free agency class. I think that they're I want to I'd say it's a splash, right? Because like Adam Thielen coming
Sure.
back would be a splash, but not in the same way Terry would or something, or Olave, right? Like those kind
Yep.
of big names that I don't even have any idea if those would even ever be realistic, but they'd be insane. I think the fact they're calling means they're not happy with who's available off the street.
Absolutely. Jeremy Malo says Johan Dotson might be on the table with Mechie going to Philly.
Yep.
Good point, Jeremy. Johan Dotson, is he on the outs in Philly and is he gettable?
Yeah, I that's a name I've seen and it makes sense. I'm not quite sure if I like the fit. But it's one of those things where, and this is such a cop out answer, but I mean it, where I think if Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi decide, hey, we're willing to give up assets to acquire somebody, I think that KOC would obviously have a vision of them fitting into the offense. I'd be curious to see if they make a trade or if they wait it out and see if any players are cut or if their trade cost goes down significantly after the roster deadline. So I would rather they do it sooner than later, but I think that's a guy who's probably not going to be traded or let go before next Tuesday, would be my guess.
We got another question, and this is powered by Viking Central. And I'm the co host as well for the Viking Central podcast. And my partner in crime is Brett Peterson. And Brett Peterson chimes in with, is it possible Hawkinson is a better fantasy option than Jefferson earlier in the season?
100%. I would almost bet money on it, but that is not legal disclosure. That is
We're
not
going to get
betting
into
advice,
that.
and I will not be doing it. But and people have this kind of negative thought of, oh, well, that's because McCarthy can't throw it downfield. And it's so foolish to look at it that way. I think we got spoiled a little bit by one, I can't believe I'm saying this, the chaos football of Nick Mullins,
Sure.
where the stat lines were insane and you'd lose every game, right? And then
Yeah.
Darnold, who was the rare case of somebody who was significantly better as a deep ball passer than anything else. How many times though in that did we still have stressful situations at the end of games where we'd have these, think of the Green Bay games, we had explosive first halves and then things
Right.
slowed down towards the end of the game. KOC is going to want to be a little slower, a little more methodical. You're still going to have those explosives given the weapons you have, but Hawkinson's going to be a huge part of that and eating up the clock and picking up chunk plays of 3, 4, 5, 6 yards at a time instead of trying to bomb it 40 yards downfield. People got mad at the end of camp that there weren't highlights coming out of McCarthy throwing deep bombs up until joint practices. And he had quite a few of those to start training camp, but if you looked on the sideline, they were working on third and short, fourth and short situations quite a bit, trying to say, hey, how can we reevaluate this and focus on getting 5, 6, 7 yards at a time instead of trying to blow the top off the place. Hawkinson is going to be a massive part of that. And I think his value last year took a hit because Darnold, one, was focused on the deep ball, not necessarily a tight end strength, but also he didn't get to work out with him in the offseason at all.
Now, I talked about that in our top 15 tight end chart was the position where I put at number 4, TJ Hawkinson. And a
Yep.
lot of that has to do with the chemistry that he's been building with JJ McCarthy. But then let's also go back. Who was his favorite target when he was in Michigan?
Yeah,
Colson Loveland, right?
Loveland.
He loves his tight ends. So that could be a security blanket, especially with Jordan Addison, who has been his favorite target. That could be his favorite target for sure, at least the first 3 weeks. I mean, he's got a multitude of weapons. He's in the best position of any rookie quarterback in who knows how long. Uh, he's got weapons. TJ's one of them.
Yeah, and I think that's one reason why the team is probably going to be more aggressive than many would think, and I could be wrong. It's just my gut in getting a wide receiver is because God forbid something happens to Hawkinson. I still like Josh Oliver, but he is more of a
Mm-hmm.
well-rounded, not necessarily strongest suit being a pass catching tight end. But Jefferson's going to be bracketed and double, triple teamed for a lot of those first 3 weeks. So you're going to need somebody who spreads the field, gives him
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, but also opens things up for Hawkinson. I think Hawk's success is going to be a lot in the play action and rollout situation,
Absolutely.
especially if this running game can hit the ground, no pun intended, but running.
Now, does that mean that you agree with where I put Jefferson? Now, again, disclaimer, not where I think he is talent wise, but where I think he would be fantasy football wise. And a lot of that has to do with, again, hopefully he stays healthy all year long, Vikings fans. All I'm saying is TJ Hawkinson's going to be a nice target for him. And once Jordan Addison's back, I think he's going to eat into some targets and catches that Justin Jefferson has enjoyed. And let's not forget, he's the best receiver in the league. He's going to be seeing double teams all season long.
Yeah, I would say if it wasn't for the Addison suspension, I'd have Jefferson one or two. I
Yeah,
think you
absolutely.
can make the debate.
Yeah,
The
sure.
Addison suspension really is going to make it hard for him, and he's still going to find success. I would switch. I would put Nakua at 2, given what I know about the Rams' current situation. I put CeeDee Lamb at 4, just because I don't even know what's going on with Dak at this point. He's so up and down, and he's disgruntled right now, it seems. So I don't, and obviously you have Pickens, right? So I don't really know exactly what Dallas is going to look like this year.
Sure.
It's funny watching that documentary that just dropped on Netflix and being like, wow, this team is very different than what they used to be. But I'd probably move him up and move Lamb down and then put Nakua at 2, personally.
Now, you brought up Dak Prescott.
Mm.
Dak, any season that he's been healthy, since he's been a starter, he's been a top 7 fantasy quarterback. And I think, let's not forget, they don't have a strong running game, but they just brought in George Pickens from the Steelers as well too. He has arguably, one of the best 1-2 punches with CeeDee
Yeah.
Lamb and George Pickens in the league. And he also has Ferguson at tight end. So he has pass catching weapons. Dallas is going to have to throw the ball. He's going to put up stats.
Yeah, and that's probably why, and that's no disrespect to CeeDee Lamb. I would move him down a little. I think Pickens is
Sure.
probably going to get a lot more targets than people maybe think right now.
Mm-hmm.
I, I struggle with Dak. And he could be incredibly strong in any given performance. I think the thing that might hurt their passing game is the lack of the run game long term. They're not going to have something to offset and like set
Mm-hmm.
up different looks a lot of the time. Obviously, you can't guard everyone, double team everyone, right? So I think if he stays healthy, I'd probably expect him to finish about where you have him as well. I see Herbert at 9. Yeah, I don't really see. I mean, I'm still always a lot higher on Mahomes than most people when it comes to fantasy, just because that guy
Sure.
just somehow still always puts up
So,
numbers.
when you talk about Patrick Mahomes, you think, oh, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he's not one of the best fantasy
Yeah,
quarterbacks in the league.
no,
He's sometimes mid.
yeah,
And you got to remember, you didn't see on my wide receiver chart, and this is because of the pending suspension that boggles my mind a little bit with Rashee Rice.
yeah.
And I say boggles my
I
mind is just because of being, putting off the hearing for the decision of the league. But that
crazy to
is
me. I get it. I get it.
absolutely,
People got mad at me on Twitter being like, "Well, he has the right to." I get it. But when a guy is literally set to serve a jail sentence, like he has to serve at some point, he has to
2
go to jail
felonies.
for 30 days. He pleaded to 2 felonies. I get it. He has the right by the collective bargaining agreement. I'm
Mhm.
not arguing with the fact that he can. I just think it's insane that it's actually happening. And, I'm glad, as much as I wish Jordan Addison didn't do what he did, I'm glad the league made a decision quickly. Helps the Vikings to play him, but
Right.
also, like, frankly, he deserves it. Uh, but man, like Rice, like really deserves it. So that's one. I agree with where you're coming from there. I'd still probably put him, my gut, above Herbert because I think Harbaugh's gonna Harbaugh even more this year. I think
Hmm.
Herbert was fifth lowest last year in pass attempts, which ties to the whole McCarthy stigma from college, by the way. That's a fun parallel people don't want to necessarily acknowledge when they bring
Sure.
up the handoff merchant thing. But I'd probably put him above Herbert because I think with Hampton, I think it's more likely they lean even
Hmm.
more into the run game.
One I might get criticized for not having a little bit higher is Jared Goff. And they're going to have a dynamic offense, but we got to remember that they have a real, like, maybe the most balanced offense in the league. With their running game that they have, Jared Goff, we got to remember, take a look at their running game. They had a loss on the offensive line. At the same time, you also lost your offensive coordinator.
That's
So
huge.
how
That
big
is
is
going to
Ben
change.
Johnson? Absolutely. So what does that look like for that offense? I'm not saying I still believe that they're going to be a top offense. You don't just forget everything. But key spots, certain calls. I mean, Ben Johnson was really good at that. So we
Yeah,
may see
I
a
think
little bit
they're
of a
going to
drop off.
stumble out of the gate. I that's my gut. It might not happen, but I think there's a good chance they start off slow. And I think
Hmm.
the philosophy it's very hard to be as aggressive as Dan Campbell is without a psycho play caller like Ben Johnson who could design those things that are for those moments. I'm not 100% sure what to expect. I would just say, like, we'll find out real quick if Dan Campbell was the mastermind behind literally everything, or exactly what Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn were responsible for. That's
Hmm.
one of the more fun NFL, not even fantasy, but just NFL storylines this year is how much of that, Mike's Magic stuff, if you're going to use that, Space Jam reference, goes from Chicago to Detroit, how much stays in Detroit, right? Like,
Sure.
we'll have to see. I'm very curious what that looks like with Ben Johnson.
KJ Frederick has two questions. KJ says also better redraft full PPR, quarterback Purdy, easy schedule, or Dak gunslinging. Again, between the two, you got to remember that Brock Purdy is going through a little bit of wide receiver issues there in San Francisco. And they lost so many weapons on defense and on the offensive side of the ball that San Fran's going to take a little bit of a step back. They lost a lot of their stars because of salary cap, and they just couldn't afford them. So that's my view on Brock Purdy. I don't think, like, talent wise, but he doesn't have the Marvel Avengers team that he used to have. And I think that will factor in a little bit. That means, the defense isn't putting the offense in as good of situations as he's had over the years. So I think that factors into it a little bit. You don't have a lot of, all of the weapons that you used to have. So that's what I think in that sense. Anything to feed off of that,
Yeah,
Jason?
I mean, it's hard because I see pros and cons to each, with the defense in San Fran not necessarily being at its peak like it was a couple years ago. That means there's going to be more obvious passing situations, but again, he's
Hmm.
not throwing to the same guys. Kittle is still Kittle, but he's getting up there. Um, that's one of those situations where he's going to be proving this year how much of the success they've had is really on him and how much was the weapons around him. Dak, I think his highs are going to be very high, and I also expect some games where he throws for like 200 yards and 3 interceptions because he's just going to have no choice but to chuck it towards his top two guys and hope his somebody in a Cowboys jersey comes down with it.
Sure.
I'd say if you're looking for a little more boom or bust, my gut would say Dak's going to have some pretty stellar performances and also some rough ones. I think Purdy's going to be probably more of a steady, safe bet.
Okay, the next question I have comes from KJ again. Is what's up, guys? With neighbors going through some lingering injuries, and I think he's talking about A-Chain with some soft tissue issues. Should I target Waddle and Ollie Gordon with my last two picks, redraft full PPR? Absolutely on Jalen Waddle. I think
Yeah.
Waddle is going to have a great season this year. We've seen some of the issues maybe that's going on with Ty, but you know, that's absolutely a good pick. Trying to target Jalen Waddle. I think if you're in a dynasty league as well, too, Jalen Waddle is somebody that you would like to have, or if you can get him in a reasonable trade, Jalen Waddle absolutely should be a target. Ollie Gordon, again, we saw Alexander Madison go down with an injury. So is Jalen Wright or Ollie Gordon going to be the number two? Right now, it looks like Ollie Gordon is the one that you should have as a handcuff to Devon Achane. And if you have Achane, you better have a handcuff.
I got nothing to add on that. I like Waddle. I think, and obviously the quarterback situation there makes things interesting because Tua's pretty hit or miss. But I like Waddle a lot. And I definitely think it just depends on who they name. But I think, yeah, from what you've said, everything I've said says Gordon's going to kind of step in to fill that role. Also, terrible for Alexander Madison. I know his last year as a Viking, there were a lot of high expectations that weren't met, but man, he was always a gem in the community. He's from 45 minutes from where I grew up in Southern California. And even in San Bernardino, everyone says he's nothing but an amazing guy. So that's one you hate to see with Alexander Madison for sure.
KJ also asked about Wandale Robinson. That's maybe what he meant with his Wandale Robinson. Again, he got a lot of share targets last year in New York, and that was just because of the neighbor's injury. But he was still steady still that year. I mean, he's a good target, but again, if you can afford to have some of these other targets, I think Wandale is a decent guy for your bench. He's not somebody that's going to be, he's more like a wide receiver for you this year. But again, he's nice to have. And if something were to happen as a handcuff, if you will, for Malik Neighbors, then yeah, he's a guy that he's going to get some starts, maybe upgraded to more of a wide receiver two type situation for your fantasy team.
That makes more sense. I was a little
Yep.
confused. I was like, how's Waddle still available? But
Yeah.
no, that makes more sense.
Wandale.
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
absolutely.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not sure Malik Neighbors is the type of guy who would miss time. He might be a guy who
Mm-hmm.
agitates something by rushing out there. But the league and the Giants are going to do everything in their power to get him on the field as quickly as humanly possible, especially if they end up in a situation early on where have they named Russell as the starter 100% yet, or are they still technically calling it a competition?
I think they're maybe calling it a competition, but
Dart has
absolutely.
looked really impressive, but I know Wilson's going to get the start.
Yep. Nope, absolutely. And then the defense, I'm projecting again. We were a top 5 defense last year. We've added pieces in the trenches. I fully expect this to be a dominant defense. And Great Viking asked us, who do you think is going to have a breakout year in our defense? Who on the Minnesota Vikings team do you have, Jason, being a breakout player on defense?
That's tough. I think it's going to be Isaiah Rogers. I know he had some success in Philly, but I really
Mm-hmm.
think Brian Flores likes him a lot.
Sure.
The easy answer, if I want to have fun, would be Dallas Turner, but that's one where I'm not. He's flashed really well early in camp. I still think he's a breakout candidate. I'm just not 100% sure how
Sure.
they're going to use him yet. Also, I did notice. I think we got to update your Vikings defense picture, man. I think this is. I think that's.
we do. I just don't have a
Is that
real good.
Xavier Rhodes?
Uh, we just didn't have a really good picture, I guess, for me to find of this year's team. But absolutely, we gotta find that. I got something going on with my camera, but focus is not working here. But yes, absolutely, I got to update our Vikings defense, and hopefully, I'm
Oh,
probably planning to have absolutely several defensive pictures to use this year.
nice. Also, I'll add, and this one's scary. Um, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. He's fallen off a little since beginning of camp, but Jeff Okuda he's the equivalent of a guy who either whiffs or hits a home run every at
Yes.
bat. He is either making some of the craziest plays, I mean, given it's camp, that I've seen somebody make like with precision to get to the ball, or
Yes.
he's holding a guy and basically tackling him 2 yards into his route, which I know is what we're kind of used to seeing out of Akuda historically. However, like I have not really seen him make the types of plays he's made in camp when he has been good. I think the depth chart still has him as cornerback 3 or 4. Um, but he's gonna have a couple boneheaded moments where we almost lose a game, get somebody into field goal range towards the end this year, and he's gonna have some big plays as well. So that's you're gonna take the good with the bad there, but I think there's gonna be some good, which is a lot more than anyone expected when we brought him in.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about that with the field goal kicking game, Will Reichard, there were some concerns in training camp, but overall, at least in preseason games, he is 6 for 6 so far going into this third preseason game against Tennessee on Friday. So, Will Reichard, where are you on the panic meter? I think some of that has been calmed with his
Yeah,
performance
it's
so
like a
far in
one,
preseason.
like a one or maybe I'd say a two or three probably because it's a Vikings kicker, so you always have to
Hmm.
elevate it. It was something. It had to have been something with the injury, and I know he wasn't still hurt when he came back.
Sure.
But I think you hurt. What was it? His hamstring, his quad? Trying to remember. I think it was an upper leg injury. And
Yes.
even when the pain goes
Hammer
away,
quad.
yeah, those types of things, they, your muscles are there in order, or they, set up to protect themselves. There are things
Hmm.
like, scar tissue, things like that, depending on how bad he tore it. I believe it was a tear. Um, but I think it just kind of messed with his angle on his follow through.
Hmm.
And we saw that early in camp. A lot of things, even when they were good, they were barely hugging the upright, like super close to being a doink. And really, since starting at the night practice, I haven't seen that a lot. Uh, Obviously you're gonna have a few that kind of get a little too close for comfort, but he's been pretty damn close to right down the middle in most of the kicks I've seen him have the last few weeks. So I'm always gonna have a little panic every time a kicker in purple lines up. Like I can't get that out of my system. None of us can. But I think they fixed something in his angle of approach and follow through that's helped him find more consistency. It might not be how he was kicking pre-injury, but whatever they've
Sure.
shifted, he's been pretty much perfect since.
He's never missed an extra point. So that's great. I hope to see long hair all season long. I got Will Reichard
Yep.
at 15. Another kicker that I just want to mention, if you're looking for a sleeper out there, Little from Jacksonville. He's not on my list, but he hit a 70-yarder in preseason.
That's
So he's got the leg.
so insane.
It is, and that's a lot of points. If he can do something like that, and if he can, I'm not saying he can consistently hit 70-yarders, but just something to keep in mind that Little's not on this roster, but he could be a kicker to watch. I know there's a kicker reach when we're talking about fantasy football, but that is something to kind of keep in mind.
2 of his divisional games will be inside also.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Um, I want to get through some of these other players and other questions that we want to get to. And then again, we got some mailbag questions we want to get to. But what are 3 players you think can win their fantasy league this year? Don't need to go real in depth, but just 3 players in the NFL.
I'm going to keep it
Doesn't have to
simple,
be Vikings.
consistent theme. It's going to be some of the big rookie RBs. I think Amarian Hampton is a guy I really like. I think he's going to a perfect situation with Harbaugh. Obviously, Genty, if you can get him, is huge. I like Geno, but I still think like that's an intentional move to really lean on the run game. And
Mm-hmm.
then Travion Henderson, especially being at joint practices, he's just insane. A couple months ago, I would have thrown Judkins in on this, but obviously
Sure.
I would
Quinshawn
expect
is,
something. I don't know. It's Cleveland. Everyone there's got
yeah,
something going on.
but they dropped charges. So, so the
Yeah,
NFL is going to do their own investigation. So Quinshawn could be boom
could be
bust type.
fine,
Yeah.
but I
Or a
also
playoffs winner for you.
yeah, I think he could be, and I think I think there's a lot of distractions that come along with something like this, and
Sure.
as a rookie, it's hard to manage that. I still think he could be very good, but I'm just gonna go, obviously avoid anything as far as potential off the field stuff even having an effect. I'm gonna go with those 3, and I have a couple ideas of maybe, or at least one good idea of another rookie RB who I think might be a sleeper.
Awesome. All right. So on to the next question. Who are your 3
There we
players that
go.
you think could be sleepers in the league that have a breakout season that just other than the ones that you mentioned, are there any others that you think on the Vikings team? So I didn't put Vikings in here. It could be
All right.
Vikings as well too, that you think are going to have a breakout season.
I mean, I think people are sleeping on what JJ McCarthy could bring to the table fantasy wise. Sleeper as far as like projected points, we have him 12th. I think just over 4,000
Hmm.
yards, 27 TDs, 3 rushing TDs. I think I think the passing TD might be a little lower, and I think the rushing TD might actually be higher. I think when you get to the goal line packages that we're gonna run, you might see some stuff that we haven't seen this Vikings offense do because of McCarthy's mobility, because of having Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. I think that he'll have more rushing touchdowns than maybe most are projecting. But
Okay.
again, the Addison suspension is going to have a lot to do with his value early on. But I really think coming out of the bye week, which I think is week 6 for us,
Totally agree.
so starting into week 7, I think you're going to start to see things fly. And he's going to make mistakes, but if you're in a dynasty league, obviously it's end of August. If you haven't drafted for
Hmm.
your dynasty league, I
Hmm.
respect you. But that's something to keep an eye on. He probably won't be your QB1 this year unless you're somebody who just loads up on weapons and takes quarterback at the last second. I'd
Sure.
look at him then. But if you're looking at dynasty, I think he's somebody who could have some value for you.
Absolutely. He's got a lot of weapons, a lot of people to go to. So JJ McCarthy, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think he's going to be in the hunt somewhere around those mid-teens as far as where he ends up this season, and we're going to get a little bit more
Yep.
into that. You talked about Jordan Mason; he's another one that could be a sleeper just with goal line carries. And again, we worry about the health of Aaron Jones sometimes, and then Addison once he's back, I absolutely think he's going to have a good year. Definitely should be somebody that you target in your league. Now we
Yeah.
have a little game that I'm going to play called Over Under with you.
Okay.
And just, real quick, you can fire off whether or not you think this is a over under answer for you. So you're not telling anyone who to bet on. This is just your answer as far as if you had to make a bet, this is who you would take. So over under the Minnesota Vikings at 9.5 wins.
Over.
Taking the over. JJ McCarthy has 24.5 TDs this season. Over or under?
Is that all inclusive? Is that
All
passing and
inclusive.
rushing?
That's
Oh,
that's a running or passing.
over.
Over. If you had to go just passing, over or under?
I'd take. Ooh, that's close. So I'll still take the over,
Okay.
but not by much.
Justin Jefferson has 8.5 touchdowns this season.
I'm gonna go under.
Under. Okay.
I think he's gonna have a lot of yardage.
I feel like this is a softball question for you, but I'm going to ask it anyways because it's out there. TJ
I'm in the
Hawkinson.
basement of a 3-story townhouse. I am out of the roof right now. Over.
Not telling you who to bet on. I'm just saying I strongly think this is going to be an over this season. And then this one's called Better Pass. Better Pass. The Vikings are plus 300 to win the division via MGM. Did the Minnesota Vikings, if you had to take a bet, are you saying bet or pass on the Vikings winning the division this year?
You know what? I like to have fun. I like to have confidence. I'm going bet.
Jason Harmon says bet. I like it. I like the confidence. All right. We talked about what they're doing now at receiver. We talked a little bit. Jets coming off the injury. Naylor's injured. Addison suspended until week 4. So we covered that a little bit, but that Naylor injury, what are you hearing about the Naylor injury? Is he possibly going to miss week 1?
What we're hearing is not much, which with Kevin O'Connell typically isn't a good sign. And so I believe it was a jammed hand, but he wouldn't. The biggest thing is what he wouldn't say, which is when they asked
Sure.
if surgery was on the table and he didn't answer. Um, so he already had a non-contact jersey on during practice before he got hurt.
Sure.
So there's just not a. I love that KOC doesn't just throw stuff to the media, but sometimes I'm like, I want to know. Tell me, hit me up and let me know what's going on. I won't tell. It's one of those things where I think reading the room. I don't think it's like he's out 6 months. But I think it's something where probably those first few games are in doubt. Especially again, the report being the Vikings aren't looking at receivers; they are actively calling teams to make a trade.
Great Viking says bet He takes he's gonna bet with you as well. Again, maybe a little bit of a homer call. Not sure which one he was taking the over with. Um, but again, he's with you on most of these. Another one, who gets more touchdowns, Aaron Jones or Jordan Mason this season?
Mason. I think TDs, I think
Okay.
yardage Jones is going to eat. But I look at some of his chunk plays last year. You'd have these long 60, 50-yard runs, and the age caught up to him a little right in those last 10,
Yeah.
15 yards. And then we couldn't really pound it in. I think that's specifically what Mason is meant to do, is come in with
Sure.
fresh legs and absolutely light
And he
it
will
up in the
this
red
year.
zone.
And
Yeah.
he will this year.
And I think as far as fantasy, it's hard to say who has more value. It just kind of depends on your scoring system. I think
Hmm.
I think Jones is going to have significantly more yardage, but I think Mason is probably going to take the lead in touchdowns.
Awesome. Love to hear it. All right. We're going to go to our Q&A mailbag every week, especially on our X. We will have these out there for Q&A. You can drop your questions. We'll feature them on the show if I'm able to catch them. But Freddie Watkins said, should I draft Aaron Jones or Jordan Mason?
Answer is yes. I'm going to
Which
cheat
one,
on
if you
that.
had to pick?
If I had to pick, I would probably take the value you get with Mason, and I'd draft more of a workhorse, kind of every down guy. Especially if you're in a 2 RB league, I would
Hmm.
probably do that because I don't think Mason gets a ton of yardage, but like he might end up in kind of the Matt Asiata situation where he has like 60 yards rushing in a game, but like multiple touchdowns. We might see that.
See, for those of you watching, if you don't know,
The
Jason
legend.
Jason Harmon, uh, shout out to Asiata. So
Yeah.
this is how you know that Jason not only covers the Vikings but knows Vikings football. Um, if I'm looking at Aaron Jones, I'm handcuffing him with Jordan Mason if possible.
Hmm.
Um, that would be my strategy and my advice for anyone out there that's looking at Aaron Jones. You should have both running backs. Aaron Jones with the PPR should be your primary. But again, depending on health, you should have Jordan Mason as a backup who could be a real big boom if for some reason anything does happen to Aaron Jones. Next, we go to Brian. So Brian asks, why don't we just go for broke and sign Randy Moss for 3 weeks? I'm sure it'd work out. We all wish. I did see a post. I'm not sure. Maybe it was you. Somebody had posted something I saw earlier this morning. Hey, if there's a quarterback wide receiver combo that you wish could come back and play a game, and they said Dante Culpepper and Randy
Pepper and
Moss.
Randy Moss. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd love to have him back.
No, I love Randy. I think he's had enough going on in the last year. He's
Absolutely.
he's fought hard enough without having to go out there and get on a football field. But I mean, hey, if you can give me a time capsule, bring in prime Randy Moss, I don't think any person on planet Earth would turn that down at
Absolutely.
any point. But no, I am, in all seriousness, I'm glad to see he's doing better, and
Shout out to Randy.
I believe he's going to be back on Countdown this year, so I'm excited.
Absolutely. We're glad to see that you're doing a lot better, Randy, and hope that health stays the same and continues. So
We don't need to read this next person's comment, by the way.
I think we
They're
do. This is
just making
an
things up.
avid listener with our first episode, right? Jenna Harmon, I think you may be related.
No, not sure.
How does it feel knowing your wife won her fantasy league last year and you lost first round of the playoffs?
Okay, so for context here, I was in a fantasy league with the incredible people at Vikes Now, some of the smartest, most analytical human beings.
Including your wife.
No, this was a different league.
Oh,
She was
okay.
not in that league.
She wasn't in that one.
Yeah, I'm talking like Dustin Baker, guys like this.
Okay.
Yannick, all these just super smart people. I sometimes I get the purple blinders on a little bit, and we're running it back this year. It's a dynasty league. We're in year 2. And I made the playoffs. I also have to admit something. I could play fantasy football and be relatively successful. I can't do fantasy baseball or basketball because I just can't. My brain cannot keep track of everything you have to do, and sometimes that happens with me with football. A little bit, gotten better. But I lost in the first round. Sucks is what it is. My wife, however, she had an incredible general manager helping her with draft strategy at a Texas Roadhouse when she did her work draft. Um, Shockingly, whoever it was helped her win her fantasy league. So, I'm sure she would also give that person who helped her pick her team a ton of credit as well.
So it's always difficult sometimes with different fantasy leagues, but
Oh yeah.
it's always a gauge of how good you are in your fantasy league, depending on, are people setting their lineups? Do they take it seriously? Those kind of things. So I will just say, because I don't know who is in your league, congratulations to your wife Jenna
Yeah.
for winning her
I,
league,
I
and
will
good
say
luck to
this
you
because she
this
did
year.
set up the league. She did set up the league for her office, and she thought it would be terrible to win because she's like,
Mhm.
I can't win. I set it up. I look like I'm cheating. So we intentionally tried to lose her the game, and she still won, which is honestly impressive.
So now that we've covered different topics with you with the Minnesota Vikings, we've covered different fantasy sleepers. We've taken a look at some of the charts that I have. Do you have anything else that you can think of that you want to give a shout out to anyone, or anything you want to plug that you're doing, Jason?
Yeah, State Fair show. If you have Sleeper, I would hope you do. It's the top fantasy app for a reason right now. I think it's actually one of the reasons I'm getting more into fantasy. I just the ease of access is incredible. But we actually have social channels on there for NFL, MLB, NBA, and you can follow specific teams. I'm actually in charge of all the Vikings news. You could also follow at Sleeper Vikings on X, which is an account that I curate content for. But if there's breaking news, we'll send a push notification to your phone, let you know whether it's fantasy, injury related, whatever it may be, or if it's actual like team news. So it's not just fantasy; it's more overall what's going on with the team. We only use it for actual breaking news, so don't worry about having your phone blown up. And then obviously Score North will be doing, I believe, the rest of the team is starting tomorrow doing daily shows for Purple Daily. I know the online committee with Jeremiah Searles and Alex Boone are going to do their show with Phil later this
That's
week.
awesome.
I think Thor Nystrom is going to be there tomorrow for Thursday. So if you happen to be around the fair, catch the Score North booth. And like we said, myself, Leighton, and Jesse will be there next Tuesday, 2 to 3, and we'll take any food donations you'd like to bring by.
Well, if you get the opportunity, tell everyone hi. Give a shout out to Thor for me
Yes.
too. I know I might be able to have Thor on the show here
Yeah.
on one of these weeks too, as one of our guest hosts. But I also want to shout out everyone that's out there watching that sent us
Yep.
questions, whether it be on X, YouTube, Facebook, uh, or if you're watching and you were able to comment live, we definitely appreciate it. We're going to be doing this every Wednesday throughout the season. And on the bottom on the ticker, you can follow our social media. Make sure that you subscribe, follow, and like. That's one of the ways you can support us and how we can grow. Again, you can go to our link tree that's on the bottom /fantasy 15 football FB for more fantasy 15 content. Again, you can follow us on X, YouTube. It'll be uploaded to Spotify after this. And of course, we'll be doing some TikToks all season long to help you with your fantasy football so you can get to the playoffs. Again, I'm your host, Steve Hoykla. I want to thank you so much for watching. This is the Fantasy 15. We're your source for fantasy football. This is our special guest, Jason Harmon. I want to thank you so much for being
Of
on
course.
today. And hopefully we can have you on again
Yeah.
sometime throughout the season. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. And I'm Steve. He's Jason. Out here. Roll tape.